everyone, welcome to chapter 117 on my RLDR Custom Creations YouTube channel. And I'm standing beside my favorite vintage tool in my shop, my Makita 2020 jointer. I had some problems with it this week, and in this video I'm going to show you how I dealt with those. So if you want to see what I did, all you have to do is stay tuned. Well, as I was saying, my jointer caused me some issues this week. Yeah, and you can tell I'm at the other side of the shop and I don't have my blind up on this window yet, but it's coming. So anyway, back to my jointer. So I started with students this last week. We finished all the paperwork, the safety stuff. Now I'm just in the process of watching the students as they're making their first cuts with the bandsaw, the jointer, thickness planer. Those were the tools we basically ran this last Tuesday. So like I say, my students are awesome, and they're getting started on their equipment. Getting started on their projects. They've got some amazing stuff going. We're doing 2 guitars, a Telecaster replica and a Strat replica, and then 2 longboards. So one group was resawing on the bandsaw, which I actually thought I'd have trouble with on Tuesday, but it worked perfectly. And one of my students was missing, but the other guitar builder was starting to glue his body together for his Telecaster. And we had some really nice maple picked for that, and he's doing a wonderful job. He's working safely, doing everything exactly right. And things aren't fitting quite right. I thought, okay, I wasn't right there when he was doing it, and sometimes those first jointer cuts, you maybe not holding the piece quite right and all that stuff. And he had a little edge. We wanted to get a nice crisp edge, but there was a little bit of, a wee little bit of bark on the edge, just like an eighth. And I said, you know what, just run it over the jointer, 2 or 3 times, whatever it takes to get it done, to get it nice and square. So he does that, and then he brings his piece over to me and shows it to me, and he says, is this what you meant? And I looked at it right away, and I could see the taper on it. And I've done it on this board already. Okay, I tried to exaggerate it. I cut it on the bandsaw to this taper. But I think he had said that he had made 6 passes, 6 or 7 passes, and when we cut it straight on the bandsaw again, it was half an inch out. So something was horribly wrong with my jointer setup. So, and you're always going to find that when you can least afford it. So if you want to see how your bandsaw is resawing, just take a piece of ebony and resaw it. And I guarantee you, if it isn't right, it'll screw up right away. Anyway, enough of that. So that means I had a little bit of work on my hands the next day, and I needed to get this thing working properly because this jointer is one of the foundational tools in this program. So I am going to show you what I did to get this set up properly again, and maybe a little bit of a how-to checklist for you as well. So hang in there. I'm going to bring you in a little closer, and we're going to get this going. And here it is, one of the anchors of my shop. As I said, my Makita 2020 jointer. Yeah, it's an old piece of equipment, but jointers and most woodworking tools are relatively simple tools. So just keeping them fresh and in good condition. Basically, it's electric motor and bearings and things like that, all which can be purchased just about anywhere. So anyway, yes, you can see this really good now. That taper was what this was cutting. And usually a taper means, in this case in particular, my outfeed table was tilted down. So they talk about in books and everything about the tables being coplaner. that means on the same level. So not that they're going to be exactly the same, because your infeed table always is your depth of cut below this one, the outfeed table. So the outfeed table you should never change. In fact, when I worked at school, I took the knob off the outfeed table so nobody ever messed with it. But here I don't need to do that, and I just left everything the way it was. So the other thing that can cause that to happen as well is if the knives on your cutter head are too low as well. Okay, so you've got the whole thing is kind of out of whack. They talk about everything being coplaner and your jointer knives at the correct height. That is really important. Now, this jointer throws another little delicacy into all of this, and that this is not what I would call your normal jointer. This jointer is a parallelogram style jointer, and it doesn't have the angled ways that I would almost argue 90% of jointers have. So, not that I like this system better, but not that it is or it isn't. Both can be made to work really well. So, but I found this more of a challenge, and I probably did it wrong anyway, but I wasn't exactly sure how to raise just that end of the table. I came up with a way, and I don't know, it's maybe a bit cheesy, but I'll show you what I did. Um, but anyway, when you're going to start looking at your tool and evaluating what's wrong, there are a few pieces of equipment that I would suggest you get. Now, you don't necessarily have to buy some of these, because like a good piece of plywood, properly jointed, would make an excellent straight edge. I just happen to have this Veritas straight edge. I've had it for years, and it's 3 feet long, and it's machined edges, so it's true. So that's a good weapon to have in your arsenal. The next thing to have, and I guess these maybe you wouldn't even need to buy these. You could use a set of wedges and a pencil, and get your clearances correct. But I use a feeler gauge, which I like to use these. They're nice. And the other thing that I think is a good investment is a small set of machinist squares. And not that you're going to use that necessarily to set the coplanerness of your jointer, but for setting the fence and other things, it's really handy. Now you'll notice, yes, I removed the guard for clarity, but I will not be running the jointer without the guard on it. So yes, to see this, it needs to be gone. Another odd thing about this particular cutter head is it only has 2 knives. And I don't know why Makita did this. It has 2 knives and I believe a universal motor, like kind of the same motor that your router has. A little bit odd, but hey, it works, and it's got to be 40 years old, so obviously it's worked for quite a while. But I'm just going to rotate the knives out of the way because they're kind of freshly sharpened, and I don't want to nick them with what I'm about to do. Now, it would have been better if I would have shown this to you yesterday. But what I'm up against here is, so when this straight edge sits on the outfeed table like this distance here should be the same here and the same here. And your knives, where's my stick? Here it is. Your knives, see, they just kind of grab that block. Notice I have some marks there. So when it drags at about 5/16 of an inch. And I actually thought that was a wee bit high, but I played with them for about a half hour. This isn't always the easiest to get right. And I do have a magnetic setter somewhere, but you think I could find that? So I went back to the old wood route. One other thing, excuse me, my knees are getting sore here, or my toes. One other thing you want to keep in mind when you start this venture. Find an owner's manual for your jointer. It is a good place to start. There were a couple of things that this jointer needs to have set before you start playing with this. And if I wouldn't have known that, I probably wouldn't have done it quite correctly. Would I have gotten it to work? Yes. But I like to do things the way the original engineers intended. That's always important. So anyway, we went through the tools you're going to need to do this. I would say yes, the owner's manual is a really, really good place to start. Hopefully there's a maintenance section in there where you can go through this and do it. Learning where all your adjustments are is another really important thing. And without the angled ways, in order to get this bed up, I couldn't just take a little metal shim and put it in the bottom of the way like I did millions of times with jointers we had at the school. But I did notice one little thing. Okay, there's this sheet metal piece. It's a little heavier sheet metal. It's fastened onto the body here. And I noticed there's a little bit of and you won't see it from this angle, there's a little bit of a casting line in this outfeed table that it looks like this should fit into. So when I was examining this thing and looked, how do I set this thing? I realized that this part had actually, this tin part here was covering the recess in that table. So over the years, it had probably moved. So, and I remember asking myself, is it as simple as this? So I loosened 6 screws, or 3 on the backside, and took my plastic dead blow hammer and just tapped it up a little bit, and sure enough, it moved. So I managed to get this right using that setup. So let's go back. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to move in a little closer and show you in more in depth what I did. All right, you're not seeing me now. You'll just see the outfeed side of the jointer. I wanted to show you a couple of things. I never knew what this was for. Apparently, when you're setting the outfeed table, you want the outfeed table to line up on there. And I don't think it quite does, but it's all the way up now, which kind of concerned me a little bit because I always like to have things in the middle of their adjustment. But it worked. And that's one of the reasons I didn't show you this yesterday, because I didn't know it would work. The other thing that I mentioned in the previous part of the video, I hope you can see this, but look at that casting mark in the table here. See that? Okay, and it looks like, and this part here, this brown part, was much higher. So that meant that the table was actually slanting away from the cutter head, which was largely responsible for my taper. So I adjusted that. I got it to there. I'm not going to change anything because right now this all works. So the other thing that I should mention, okay, and I think I'm going to adjust you guys just a little bit so you can see this. Okay, hopefully that's going to do it. What you're looking for is this. I'm getting a wee little bit of drag on my feeler gauges that I have, and this is hard to do here, but you want to get right to the end. And I have a little bit of drag there again. I'm going to try doing this a different way. Maybe for the video it's good, but I want to see that I've done it the same. Yeah, that looks really good. I think I adjusted the table a little lower for my cut yesterday after I finished this. But so what I did here is I got the outfeed table and the infeed table on the same plane, not the same height. You can't put the straight edge on and have it the same all the way across when you're jointing. You know, for now, yeah, I could turn it there, but I don't think we need to do that. So anyway, that That got the tables coplaner. So setting the pointer properly as per the owner's manual, and then realizing that over time this outfeed table had drooped. That was the first step to getting that correct. But once you're in this deep, not working with your knives would be a bit foolish, because resetting them is always a good idea. So it's called a Magna set, and I have one of those somewhere, but I couldn't find it. That's embarrassing. So anyway, my owner's manual recommends using just a stick. So you'll notice I have 2 marks on it. So see, I set it there, and I'm just going to put some light pressure on it, and I'm going to rotate. And look at that. It's moving, what is that, about 5/16, maybe a shy 3/8 kind of thing. And it's important to have it the same at both ends. And I lucked out and got it. Now, I had concerns with this that oops, got that wrong, that maybe my knives were a little high in this position. But I did some tests, and it seems to work really, really well. So I did something that I've never done before either. When I had these knives out, I actually touched them up a little bit, but in a very, very crude way. So I'm not going to take the knives out again to show you that, but I have some old planer knives for other things, and well, they're not, I don't know, they're 12 inches long, but I'll show you what I did with those. And it might be a good way for you to touch up your knives from time to time. And I think I'm going to make a way to sharpen my own stuff, like an accurate way, which I have a few ideas and probably show you in some future video. But anyway, so the knives are in. Right now, this machine cuts really well. It just cuts the way it should. So hopefully, if you're having some issues with your jointer, this will help you work through them. Okay, I'm going to show you what I did with the knives yet. So hang back. I'm going to set up, and we're going to show you. Okay, well, this is one way of refreshing your knives. Is it a really, really good way? Probably not, but it could be made to be very good. And if I would have taken the time to take a piece of stock, cut a kerf in it at the angle that this knife is sharpened, and then ran things along here, that could actually be a very, very good way to sharpen. But I didn't do that. And just to touch things up, I mean, sharpening is sharpening. Whether you're sharpening a gouge at the lathe or a chisel when you're working with a fine woodworking project, sharpening is all kind of the same. Now, I bought some of these cheapies from Princess Auto. I wanted to try to see what they were like. But basically, all I would do is, and I think all of you can feel that, when it's touching the complete surface, or if you're touching the high parts of the bevel, so that you can feel. So I'm just going to take this, and you'll see right away how you're doing. Now, this bevel is way steeper than the one on the jointer. I think the jointer bevel is about 35, maybe 40 degrees. This looks considerably more. Plus, it's a way longer knife, so that I actually find this one harder to do than my jointer knives. The other thing that's important if you're going to touch your knives up this way is there can't be a lot of nicks in them. This is too slow, in my opinion, and not an accurate enough way to take the knife down to a point where you can regrind it and get rid of the nicks and things like that. So, but I like these little easy lap hones. I've used them in turning for years, and you know, and then of course you would do the back a little bit as well. I had one nick in one of my knives, and I actually got it out doing this, like a little bit on the front and then a wee bit on the back. And you want to make sure that your knife stays straight, though. That is important, especially with a jointer. So, is this a good way to sharpen? Uh, I guess it's better than cutting with a really, really dull set of cutters. Is it perfect? Probably not, but it's probably going to be enough to get you going. And like my knives were fairly recently sharpened. I think they were sharpened about a year ago, which seems like a really long time, but this jointer didn't get used that much in the last year. So they looked good, they cut pretty good, but now while I had to mess with the infeed and outfeed anyway, I thought I'd just take them out and clean everything up. Maybe that's another thing that I didn't mention. I thoroughly cleaned the cutter head. All the gum is off of it, and that's another important thing to do. So I thought while I was at it, I would take my knives out and give this a try. So, but I think what I'm going to do is set up some type of system where I've got this knife held in a jig with the cutting surface parallel to a table, and then I'm not sure what I would run along there. I mean, if a guy had a radial arm saw, you could just set that and do that, but I don't have one anymore. So I'll figure out a way to do that, and when I do, I will show you that. However, to get you by, and I can see, I don't know if you'll see this on camera or not, but I can see where I've been sharpening, and the edge is definitely better. So, not the best, but it can work if you need it to. So anyway, with that in mind, I think it's time that I've actually shown you everything I intended to. So we're going to close this video off. How did we do? I think this board was parallel to begin with, and to me it looks pretty much spot on. Excellent. Well, I think that does it for this one, the weekly edition. Hopefully you learned a few things from that. I sure learned a lot about my jointer again by actually doing it, and I would have loved to have shown you that process, but I was all over the place and I just didn't think it would video properly. And then I get thinking about the video and not thinking about what I'm doing. So I got it done. It seems to work really nicely. Yes, I will put the guard back on. So anyway, yeah, the sharpening part is a little bit, but if you're fairly competent with, like for example, if you can hand hone your gouge, you can do this. It's not that hard. It's just finding the flat and not losing track of it. That's all. A little bit of practice, you'll do good. So anyway, with that in mind, it's time to close this video down. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you on the weekend edition. So hang in there, everybody, and take care.